Hello everybody, my name is Dratnos and welcome to a special video. So my team and I entered a community-run Mythic Dungeon tournament called Keystone Masters, which is really cool. And here's some footage of our run. This was a Temple of Sethraliss plus 13, and we're up against some other team who also did this dungeon on plus 13. And what happened is it was broadcast live about the same time that this video was uploaded actually on the Keystone Masters Twitch, so you can go check that out. Check out their VOD to see us cast live against some other team. I don't know if we won or lost, but we're pretty happy about our run, so pretty glad with this particular performance. You'll notice we skipped the first pack of the dungeon here, and then we pulled these two packs together. Normally we avoid these pulls in high keys, but here we've decided to do them so that we can start getting our cooldowns on cooldown as early as possible, and so that we can skip some more problematic enemies later that we can't find a way to efficiently pull big. Because this is such a low keystone level 13, it's a lot lower than we normally do, we're going to be looking for opportunities to pull a lot of enemies together, and when there are groups of enemies that for logistical reasons you can't do that with, those are the ones that we're trying to skip here, rather than the enemies. On like a 20, we're trying to skip the hardest enemies, or the ones that have the worst ratio of like health to the count that they give. Whereas here, we're much more interested in just making sure that we can pull efficiently large groups of stuff together. We want to try and skip a lot of infested enemies when possible, and that's what we're up to here. So of course, yeah, the affix is active this week. This was recorded now a couple weeks ago. We're teaming infested, tyrannical and volcanic. So tyrannical dungeon, right, we're going to be able to blast through this trash on plus 13, and that is our plan. We were actually debating pulling some of this trash onto the boss here, but we ended up not doing it. Partially that is because at the time of this recording, this boss fight was bugged, such that Cyclone Strike was actually quite a difficult ability to dodge. And so with that being in the mix and all the area being denied around your tank by those Shrouded Fangs and the Blade Flurry that they do, we didn't feel actually comfortable pulling anything onto this boss, so we ended up just doing it by itself. But in many of our runs, we tried to pull as much trash onto bosses as possible. But this particular dungeon is actually very difficult to do that in a lot of cases, so we ended up having... We didn't end up being able to do that very often. I don't anticipate that the other teams were able to do it very much either, though, except perhaps on this boss. Perhaps some teams found a way to do it on this boss. The second boss, of course, only spawns after you kill all the trash in that room, so not possible there. The third boss is very hard and spawns after you kill all the trash in the room as well, so it's difficult to pull trash onto that one. And then the fourth boss, everybody will be pulling trash onto at the end of that encounter, so that's our opinion there. This particular boss fight on plus 13, not particularly deadly. The main way to get yourself killed on this fight is by killing yourself with Lightning Shield. The other thing you have to look out for there is the Appeal of Thunder ability that's going off right now. So the way that one works is that right after you switch over to Aspix, Adderus will jump to the nearest player to Adderus and do the Appeal of Thunder AoE. So we always bait that out so that it doesn't actually deny us area around Aspix, and that ends up letting us get more uptime on the boss here. You'll also notice that I'm playing Outlaw here rather than Assassination, which Assassination is what I normally play in this dungeon in high keys, and it often does a really good job of pumping on this particular fight because Assassination is so good when it gets those few globals on the target right before it gets lightning shielded. Those globals are still going to do a lot of damage, and so Assassination gets to realize almost all of its 2 target potential on a fight where pretty much every spec is only realizing 1 target's worth of potential. However, even though Assassination would be really good for this fight, we felt that Outlaw was going to be better across the totality of the dungeon. We're trying to do a lot of very big pulls here, and Outlaw is very good at that particular style of pull. Particularly when enemies are dying quickly, Assassination loses a lot of value from your initial Garrotes that are empowered by Shrouded Suffocation. If a target ever dies while that Garrote is still ticking on it, you're really not happy with Assassination. That was a global that you spent at the start of that fight that didn't end up doing as much damage as it would have if it had lasted the full duration. And so in these kind of lower keys, on non-fortified weeks, like the trash is falling over pretty fast, we ended up thinking that Outlaw was going to be the better play. All right, so now we're crossing this bridge here. This is a really obnoxious rider because it's both infested and we don't really have a good way to skip it. We would basically have to use Shroud here because this thing's immune to CC, and we don't want to use our Shroud yet. We're using our Shroud up ahead. And so we can't use it on this rider, so we end up just biting the bullet, killing this rider by itself. There's not really a better answer to this that we could find, although it's possible that if a team beat us, it's partially because they found a better answer to that, and they... what our plan is we want to skip some of this trash that's up ahead right here, but maybe there's a route that involves killing this and skipping that infested enemy, and is more efficient in terms of percent. So we all get started up on this moon marker, and then we're going to Shroud, and we're going to try and skip this entire area. And part of the reason we want to do this is because we don't want to deal with Shrouded Fangs, and there's a Shrouded Fang patrol on teaming weeks, and we also don't want to deal with this infested rider either. So we get to skip both of those components, and also these kind of annoying marksmen and these snakes that cast dust clouds, and we just want to get right into this room. And this is where we're going to do our biggest, craziest pull of the dungeon. We're going to pull all the non-infested enemies in this room at once, and we're going to just try and kill them all. This is only really possible because Greater Healing Potion has been nerfed like 3 times since this expansion came out. It's now a single target heal, and targets can't get healed by it multiple times. So it ends up being very easy to just, you let those initial few healing potions go off, and then you can, like, you know, Solar Beam one, or not. You don't even have to really bother. You can just let them heal as much as they want, and stuff is still all going to die very quickly. It doesn't even out-heal our damage by very much at all. So the main thing we're looking to kick here is Electrified Scales on the Crowless Riders, because that is it's very possible that you'll wipe to that, particularly with the high attack speed of both Rogues and Demon Hunters. You'll notice our Priest has gone down there. She got cleaved by a Crowless Rider while trying to get in to do some Holy Nova damage. Luckily, our tank is a Brewmaster and very capable of kiting. And he was lucky to not have any dots on him, so he was able to kite, stop taking damage, and get down to 1 health. And then as a Brewmaster, when you're at 1 health, your stagger can't actually do that final lethal point of damage, and he wasn't taking any other damage. And so he was able to kite for long enough for the res to go through and to get healed up. So now we're done with that pull. We've used all our big cooldowns, and now we're just kind of, we've got to clear up this infested to spawn the boss. There's not really, again, this is an annoying infested. We were playing around with ways of pulling this with the infested rider on the bridge before, and then letting us skip other trash, but at the end of the day, we decided it was better to just, again, bite the bullet and kill this infested thing by itself. And now we're actually doing something really cool. If you look at the Demon Hunter over here, he's going to double jump, and you can pull that Agitated Nimbus through the wall there, so we're going to be able to do that with this boss fight. And we're not going to focus too much damage onto it now. I am going to turn on my Blade Flurry, because that's a single target increase, to just turn on Blade Flurry whenever there's anything nearby, and you have a Keep Your Wits About You trait, which of course I do. That's the reason that Outlaw is good. And then we're going to focus it down during the intermission phase, because during the intermission phase, when you're doing keys at a level much lower than your group is, which is what we're doing, right? Our DPS relative to the Keystone level is very high. We're going to finish off these snakes long before the intermission phase is actually over. And so we're going to now we have this piece of trash that we're actually killing and making good use of during this intermission phase. And this is something that I'm really happy with. I think this is one of the smarter things that we've come up with. I don't even know who came up with it, actually. It might have been some other group that we've stolen it from, but it's one of the things I'm most happy that we do, because it's a really cool way to get something done during what would otherwise be garbage time. Anyway, now the rest of the boss encounter is going to go on. Not really much other trash we can pull onto this. You'll also notice there I just rolled 5 buffs as Outlaw. That's really good. If you watch the DPS meters, you're going to see good things happening for our hero down there. That's part of the joy of Outlaw, is you just never know which part of the dungeon you're going to do good damage on, or which single target encounters you're going to do good damage on, because it's just so dependent on this RNG factor. So if that doesn't sound fun to you, you shouldn't play the spec. But it's fun. I enjoy it. I enjoy the RNG component here, and just getting to demolish enemies once every time Blizzard decides I can. So yeah, once again we kill off the trash here. Now this fight is actually very easy on low tyrannical, because it gets harder at high tyrannical, because there's this phase that comes up later in the fight where it's in the last phase and a set of snakes hatches and starts to try and kill you. But when you're doing it on low tyrannical, you actually skip that overlap. If you kill it before, like if your group's DPS relative to the difficulty of the dungeon is very high, then you're gonna skip that overlap entirely, and this last phase isn't bad at all. The main thing to remember here is to keep moving as those spits are coming out, because you can get knotted in the spit, and that can be a problem if you're not broken out immediately. So doing that is a good way to avoid dying. Not particularly necessary for us here. We can definitely get healed through it at this Keystone level, or have enough time to just get broken out. So nothing to worry about. But on particularly high keys, we want to be always moving as those spits start coming out. Okay, so now we've got an infested Nimbus, a non-infested Stormcaller, and Waffle's actually going to go ahead, our boomkin, Wafflesauce, he's going to go ahead and grab another Agitated Nimbus for us there, after he gets knocked back by the maze a couple times, of course, as is tradition. And now this is going to let us deal with the 2 infested that we have left in our route, except for the very last enemy that we're going to kill in the entire dungeon. And that's gonna then for the rest of the time we're just gonna have big pulls of non-infested enemies. So this is a little bit annoying. This part of the thing with infested is you have to come up with the least annoying way of dealing with the stupid affix that we all hate. Luckily, by the time this video comes out, there's only going to be a couple days left of it, so that'll be nice to be done with that. So yeah, 2 agitated Nimbuses, each of which are going to spawn some Kahunis, and we're leaving this imbued Stormcaller alive. We could have CC'd it, but we don't even want to bother, right? It doesn't add any time to our route to have this infested Stormcaller here, and you'll see we were even able to cleave it down a little bit through the regenerative blood, just with natural Blade Flurry AoE and Demon Hunter AoE, and I guess Balanced Druid and Brewmaster AoE. as well as that. So now we kill off this Stormcaller. We don't want to bring it with us because it's a caster. It's hard to bring those casters with you because they're just difficult to move. They like to stand still and cast from far away. So it would save us less time than it was worth. And this pull that we're about to do is very big, and we don't want to have any extra nonsense going on with it because this is already going to tax all our resources. Normally on a high key, one thing you want to be really careful of doing is pulling this room too quickly. Because if you do so, you're going to be forced to use cooldowns, and then you're going to be caught fighting the hardest boss in the dungeon without any cooldowns available. But we're not too worried about this on this Keystone level. We think we can handle this boss with no cooldowns at all. So I'm happy to use my Cloak. I'm happy to use Healing Potion. I'm going to probably use my Health Stone. Yeah, there's my Health Stone. I'm going to use Crimson Vial. I'm going to use all of my defensive suite to not die to this part of the dungeon. And then we don't need it for this boss on a 13. The boss is not the hard part. The hard part is dealing with the inefficiencies of the route, which are created by the fact that we can't pull trash onto bosses in this stupid place. So yeah, the dervishes are down. One thing that we're going to now take advantage of is the fact that this boss, when it spawns, has a period of about 2 seconds where it's inactive, where you can DPS it, but it won't actually do anything. So what we do is on this fight, on pretty much every key we do now, we pull it as soon as it comes up. And you see it's not hitting yet, it's not hit anybody, it's not done anything, now it's hit somebody. 95%. So we did a full 20th of this fight before the boss actually did anything to us at all. And that's really a really nice place to be, particularly, I mean, obviously as you do it in higher Keystone levels, it'll be less of a percent of the boss's health, but there it's even more important to, shorten this fight by as much as you can. So that's something that I would really look into trying to do, and that's part of the benefit on a high key of doing a small pull right before this boss, is that you'll come into it with cooldowns, with everybody ready, and without everybody needing to, spend more than a couple seconds of eating to get full health. So this fight on 13 Tyrannical, really the only thing that matters is making sure that nobody soaks while they still have their debuff. Other than that, it doesn't really matter who soaks. Demon Hunter soaking is ideal because they have a lot of leech. Me soaking as well is pretty good if I have Cloak available, but I obviously do not have that because I used it on the trash. Or if I have my leech buff rolled as an Outlaw Rogue, which you can see I don't have that rolled. I have 2 other buffs rolled, so I'm not even going to be re-rolling to try and get it. And then other than that, just whoever's available and doesn't have stacks and is near the thing. We don't want people to be moving too much on this fight. So Waffle, for instance, we don't want him to go and soak things if it's going to cause him to spend more than 1 global worth of moving, because he can mitigate the DPS loss from that pretty easily by using like a Star Surge. But if he has to move all the way across the boss, that's probably going to be inefficient for us, and we're going to lose damage. And the main thing that our strategy is about on this difficulty here is not losing damage. It's not about making the boss killable. The boss is extremely killable for us on this Keystone level. So we just want to do it as quickly as possible, and we're okay making it a little bit more dangerous because it's not very dangerous because the key level is so low. So boss down now. Now we're going to move on to the rest of the dungeon. This part of the dungeon is not really, it doesn't really scale with Keystone level very much at all. It's more an execution check, which means that it's actually, this is almost the hardest part of the dungeon for us. You'll see there Waffle, in fact, getting knocked back by those orbs twice. Not so much this orb run. This orb run is pretty easy, except for Waffle, who's now taken 4 orbs so far this dungeon and gotten knocked back 4 times total. But other than that, this particular orb run here, this room, is a good opportunity to either make time if you're, behind on time against whatever team you're up against, which I don't know if we are or not. I hope we are or not, but it doesn't really matter what the Keystone level is here. It's just a question of how well you can execute this run. And we're going to use a different strategy for each side. So the right-hand side, which we're about to start right now, is going to be Snap, our Demon Hunter, and our tank, and they're going to do a 2-person mission here. And that mission is going to be Jason, our tank, is going to distract all the enemies, and Snap is going to solo orb run here, using a Sky Step Potion, using Fell Rush, using Vengeful Retreat, and he's just going to throw the orbs at himself, and then jump ahead and catch it, and deposit it. And you'll see there, if you were looking at the skull part of the screen, he was able to successfully execute that. Now it comes time for myself and Wafflesauce, our turn. So I mounted Wafflesauce's travel form here, and what that'll let me do is it'll let me carry the orb without Waffle getting slowed. And then we can deposit very easily. So the way this works, Waffle grabs the orb, then he throws it onto himself, and because I'm higher up, I will catch it. So he does that now. Now I have the orb, and now we run to the skull, and we can deposit it very easily. Waffle, in fact, is the one who gets to click and make it deposit. Now we're running to the end here. You'll see Mischief popping a Sky Step pot so that she can get ahead of us here and be the person targeted by Lava Burst. That's because we need her to die so that she can get rezzed. And then the nice thing about me being on Waffle's back here as well is that I'm going to get threat before Waffle does. That's going to give Waffle the time he needs to cast Rebirth. on Mischief, and that way this battle res is going to let us reset all the enemies here, and all of us will get rezzed at this point further up ahead in the dungeon, and we will have temporarily skipped all of these enemies on the bridge, and then we'll be able to deal with them later once we're empowered during this boss fight. The way that we remember where to cast that, there's a pretty small circle for where you can safely res people and not aggro either the hexers or the enemies behind you. So using the art on the ground, if you just see where we did it on the spot there, that's the best place to replicate this. It's just the little tip of the horn there on the art on the floor. Now we're going to pull all 4 hexers together. This is something that we actually were doing successfully on even higher keys this week as well, up to like 18, because you can get away with this even if you don't. You're gonna let a lot of lava burst through. So what you need to do, rather than just cannon off your kicks as soon as they come off cooldown, is you need to intelligently decide what you're gonna kick. So you need to choose whether or not to kick each lava burst cast based on who it's targeting, rather than just saying, all right, I've got next circle or whatever, and kicking whoever it's on. Because if it's targeting somebody who's got an immunity, who's got a defensive, then you don't need to kick it. And if it's targeting somebody who's already low, who's got a lava shock, or sorry, a flame shock, then you absolutely do need to kick it. So that's a strategy that you can adopt even if you're pushing higher keys. You can save time by pulling those 4 hexers together, because this is a dungeon where it's hard to save time by pulling multiple enemies simultaneously, and that's one of the few ways that we've found that you might be able to do that profitably. All right, so now time for the boss fight. We're just going to kill off these hexers one at a time. We're not going to focus the Heart Guardian very much. That's something you would, on a higher key, usually your focus is Heart Guardian first, and then Plague Doctor, and then hexers. On this key, our focus is we want to kill the Plague Doctor. We don't want to let that snake charm anybody or cast, so we're going to deal with that. But then we're going to try and kill hexers as a priority, and we're just cleaving down the Heart Guardian because it doesn't actually represent all that much of a threat to Jason on this level. He can tank a Heart Guardian and get a couple stacks of the debuff, and he's going to be fine. Now here, just chilling out there, you'll notice that I used my Roll the Bones right before my Alacrity buff fell off. If you're an Outlaw Rogue, that's the way you're going to want to do this here during this downtime, and that way you'll be able to maintain 5 stacks of that Alacrity haste. And then we're going to come in to this part of the fight. This is the second phase, of which there are now only 2, which is nice. There used to be 3 earlier in this expansion, and that was awful. And this is where we're going to use our second Bloodlust of the dungeon, and our second of two Bloodlusts. We're going to kill off these hexers as a first priority. We're not worrying too much at all about that Heart Guardian. I am going to stand in a swirly and take some damage from that, so that's not advised. That's not part of the strat. That was a little bit of an error there. Now we're just going to kill off these enemies here. I'm cleaving them down as best as I can with my Blade Flurry. And now we've gotten all the hexers taken care of, so the boss is healable. And we're just finishing off all this other stuff while our healer and our 2 off healers, so our tank and our balance druid, both have heals. And those are actually very effective on the Avatar of Sethraliss because the buff given by the orb provides a flat increase to any heal that goes on them, on the boss. So you want to have all your off heals healing as well because they will all heal for a bunch of extra. So that's a huge thing that's worth doing. All right, so now here comes the last phase. About 5 seconds into this phase, we're going to get empowered by the boss. That's going to give us 95% damage reduction. It's going to give us a boatload of haste as well. And that's going to let us pull all this extra trash from earlier and kill all of that while we're empowered by this buff, which is going to make it very quick, very easy, very painless. And there's really no chance that we can die from here. It would be very, very difficult for any of us to actually get killed by any of these mobs because we're taking 95% reduced damage. So that's why we like to do this here. There's also one infested enemy that we did not pull from the bridge. We're saving that for later. We want to cleave everything down while we can, and then we'll grab that infested enemy at the end of this and kill it off while we're killing some of these stationary enemies in the boss area here. And that will be all the count we need for this dungeon. That's gonna be everything we need. If you look at the timer here, we're coming up to about 19 minutes, which is a pretty good time. We're pretty happy with 19 minutes. I don't know what the teams we're up against are like, but I hope that we won. If we didn't, I think it was still a good run from us. I think we put out a good show. So I hope you have enjoyed this insight into our tournament run here. We may be featured more in coming weeks on their stream as well, and I may make videos more like this for those runs too. So thanks everybody for watching. If you enjoyed this video, remember to like and subscribe and all that stuff. And I will see you in the next one.